All right, good morning. Although I don't like to say good morning. Good day, group A, B, C, D, and E. Happy Thursday. So today's lesson is subtracting measurements. Just like the adding, you have to have a common denominator. And subtracting, you have to have a common denominator as well. There are some steps that can be a little bit tricky. Make sure you take notes. Pause it as you need to. Pause for the cause. And write down verbal notes as you hear me go through the process of how to do subtracting. So I like to teach this lesson backwards. Before I got started, I was trying to figure out which way to teach it. If we were in class physically, I would teach this lesson backwards, so I want to just stick with teaching it backwards. And the reason why I like to teach it backwards is because I'm teaching you the hardest thing that you need to know, and then I'm working my way to the easiest stuff. So that way we're focusing more on what is more challenging for students, and by the time we get to the beginning of the actual lesson, it'll be easier. And usually if we were in class, I'd be like, all right, Miss Wesson, we didn't had enough. So I want to work backwards. So I have a few problems on the board. I do have my columns. If it works for you, do it. Feet, inches, fractions. So for number 1, I have 18 feet. I have my columns, but there's no inches in this first unit of measurement up top. We just got flat out 18 feet. There's no inches, there's no fractions, but I want to keep my columns to keep things in order to make sure I set my problem up right. But on that bottom unit of measure, I have 3 feet, 9 and 9/16 inches. So when we're subtracting, think about it as if this top account, this is your bank account up top. This is what you have in the positive. Hopefully I'm not confusing anybody, but this is what you actually have. And the numeric expression on the bottom is something that you owe. So think about it like that. So when we're subtracting, if there's something on the bottom, that means you're in a negative. There has to be something on the top. All right, so we know we have 18 feet. We got 3 feet. There's no inches here. Because there's inches on the bottom, we need inches on the top. And because there's a fraction on the bottom, we need a fraction on the top. Again, if there's something on the bottom, think of it as if your account is in a negative, your fraction bank or your inch bank, and you have to borrow in order to take something away because you actually owe this. So we want to start from right to left. I need a fraction. The first thing I would do is go 1 column to the left to the inch column, but because there's no whole inches, I have to go to my feet. So I'm going to borrow a foot from my feet. So I'm going to cross out my 18 feet. Now I have 17 feet. Because we borrowed 1 foot from the foot bank, that means we need to transfer that foot over a column to the right, to our inch column. So if we have a foot and we want to transfer that foot over as inches, what are we transferring over? If we have a foot,
12.
Yep, and we need inches, we just borrowed 12 inches. That 12 inches is equal a foot. So anytime you're borrowing from your feet for the inches, you're borrowing 12 inches. All right? But we still need a fraction. We need something up top here. All right, we need a fraction. So when we need to borrow for the fraction, we need inches to borrow for the fraction. So now we need to borrow an inch from the 12 inches. 12 inches becomes 11 inches. We just borrowed an inch. That 1 inch transfers over to the fraction bank, to the fraction column, right? So if we transfer an inch over to the fraction, the easiest way to transfer over an inch, again, what was it? The second lesson, anytime you have a number over itself, it equals 16 over 16 equals 1. And just so happened, the denominator for this fraction is 16. So the easiest way to borrow an inch for your fraction is whatever that denominator is, that's what you're borrowing. You're borrowing whatever the denominator is over itself. All right? I'm going to say it again. Anytime you need to borrow for the fraction, and you're borrowing from your inches, you're borrowing 1 inch, right? That inch transfers over as a fraction. How does it transfer over as a fraction? it transfers over for whatever the denominator is for that fraction, which is 16 over itself. Because 16 over 16 equals 1 inch. If the denominator, if we had 9/24, then we would have borrowed 24 over 24. If we had 9/36, we would have borrowed 36 over 36. If the denominator was 4, we would have borrowed 4 over 4. Again, anytime you're borrowing for the fraction, you're borrowing an inch. That inch equals whatever the denominator is over itself, because the denominator over itself equals the 1 inch. All right? Okay, so let's keep going. And if you don't have it by now, trust me, that's why I work backwards. We're going to be going over this a lot. Repetition. So now we have a fraction. Now we can subtract. We have a common denominator, so we don't need to go looking for one. So now we have 16 minus 9. 16 minus 9 is 7. Denominator
16.
Stays the same. Always ask, can you reduce? Can you reduce 7/16? No, you cannot. So we're done with our fraction. Over to that middle column, the inches to the left. 11 inches minus 9 inches is 2 inches. So now, so far, we have a mixed number, 2 and 7/16 of an inch. Don't forget, this whole number represents inches, so you don't need to have a hyphen here. All right? This represents a unit of inches. So now let's go to our feet. One more column to the left. We have 17 feet minus 3 feet is 14 feet, one tally mark, hyphen, and 2 and 7/16 inches, and this is our final answer. All right? Okay. So let's look at number 2. If you feel like I'm moving too fast, pause it, rewind it. If you feel like you understand what's going on by the time I get through a few problems, pause it, try to work the problems out on your own before I actually work them out and see how well you did. So let's look at number 2. We have 12 feet minus 9 3/8 inches. Again, it is very important to make sure you're setting that problem up right, especially when you're stacking, because if you line it up wrong, you've already set yourself up to get the problem wrong out the gate. So, again, we have 12 feet minus 9 3/8 inches. Because there's something on the bottom, anytime there's something on the bottom, there has to be something up top. So, we have a fraction of an inch on the bottom. We need something to take it away from. We have 9 inches on the bottom. You need something to take that away from. So, we need to go to the 12 feet. Because there's no inches to borrow for the fraction, we need to get some inches to borrow for the fraction. So 12 feet becomes 11 feet. We just took a foot. Anytime you're borrowing from the feet for the inches, we transfer that foot over as inches because we need inches. 1 foot equals 12 inches. So we just borrowed 12 inches. So now we still need something for this fraction. We have a fraction over here, so we need something up top. You can't take 3/8 away from nothing. If you owe me something, you got to figure out where to get it from, and we're going to get it from this 12 inches. So now we borrow from the 12 inches. 12 inches becomes 11 inches. And we just borrowed a whole inch, but we need to transfer it over as a fraction. How do we transfer that inch over as a fraction? Absolutely. Whatever the denominator is over itself. In this case, we have 3/8 of an inch. We're going to take that denominator and put it over itself. Because 8 over 8 equals 1 inch. All right? So again, when you're borrowing for the fraction, it represents whatever the denominator is over itself. We have 8 here, so we're going to put 8 over 8. If we had 3/16, we would have had 16 over 16. If we would have had 3/32, we would have 32 over 32. And so on and so forth. Whatever the denominator is over itself. So now we got everything set up where we can subtract. The denominators are the same, that bottom number. So now we have 8 minus 3. 8 minus 3 is 5. Denominator stays the same. We got 5/8 of an inch. Can we reduce 5/8? No, we cannot. So now we have 11 in the inch columns. One over to the left. 11 inches minus 9 inches is 2 inches. So far we have a mixed number of 2 and 5/8 inches. But now, one more column to the left, feet. That 11 feet, it just drops down. We're not giving anything away. So now we have 11 feet and 2 and 5/8 inches. Always double check to make sure if you can reduce or not. If you have not reduced to the lowest terms, your answer will be marked wrong. And that is your final answer. Cool? Pace cool? All right. So now let's look at number 3. We have 21 feet minus 3 and 1/16 of an inch. Again, we have something on the bottom. That means your bank, you owe something from your bank. You got to get it from somewhere. We need to have inches up top. We need to have a fraction on top. Anytime there's something on the bottom, there has to be something up top to take away. So we borrow 4 of the top. We're going to go to that 21 feet because there's no whole inches. So 21 becomes 20 feet. We just borrowed 1 foot. That 1 foot transfers over as 12 inches. But we still need a fraction. Where are we getting that fraction from?
16.
But where are we getting it from? Don't forget where you're getting it from. Don't move so fast that you forget to show where you got it from. And then we just borrowed an inch. It transfers over as
16 over 16.
Whatever the denominator is over itself. Hopefully y'all got that by now. Don't move so fast that you forget to cross that 12 inches out. You got to show where you got that fraction of an inch from. Otherwise, I've seen plenty of students do this. You know what you're doing. I know you know what you're doing. You start speedballing. You take your 16, 16, subtract. But then when you get to inches, you say 12 minus 3 because you forgot to decrease that by 1 inch. All right, so now we can subtract. We got a common denominator. So now we got 16 minus 1 is 15. Denominator
16.
stays the same. Can we reduce 15 16ths? No, we cannot. So inch column, 11 minus 3.
9. Oh no, it was 7.
8.
Born now.
Don't do that mental gymnastics. 5, 2, 7. 11 minus 3 is 8. And I know sometimes people get nervous, like my crowd back here. So far we got a mixed number of 8 and 5/16 of an inch. Again, this 8 represents a whole number of inches. But we still have to come one column over to the left at 20 feet. We're not subtracting anything from it, so we just drop it down. We got 20 feet and 8 and 15 16ths inches. And that is your final answer. Number 4. I got my columns, right? You notice there's nothing in that fraction column. Do we need to put something in that fraction column? Think about your accounts. Do you owe money? Do you owe anything here?
No.
Do you need anything here?
No.
No, you don't owe anything. But you have something here. You owe something, right? Do you need something here?
Yep.
Yes, you do. Anytime there's something on the bottom, take it from the top. You got to borrow for the top. So we're going to borrow from the feet. 24 becomes 23 feet. We just borrowed 12 inches. So I'm going to bring my foot over there, show my 12 inches. Do I need to borrow for a fraction? No, we do not. There's nothing there. I put that column there just to show you. We don't need anything because there's nothing that exists there. So now, in this case, we just go ahead and subtract. No fractions involved. 12 minus 5 is? 7. And drop that 23 feet. And 7. Inch marks follow that 7 in this case because there's not a fraction. And that is your final answer. All right, so the first 4 problems. Again, we're working backwards. Just so you can get the gist of how to borrow for the fraction and how to borrow for the inches. All right, so we got 4 more problems on the board. It's going to switch up a little bit. Again, first 4. Anytime there's something on the bottom, you have to have something on top to take it away from. It's just regular subtraction, except we're dealing with measurements. So let's look at number 5. I got my column set up. We got 15 feet 11 inches. There's no fraction up top. Minus 12 feet 3/4 of an inch. There's no whole inches in that bottom numeric expression. So the first thing we need to do is what? Because there's a fraction on the bottom, we need to have one on the top. Think of it as if your bank account is in a negative here. You have to have something up here. So you want to work right from right to left. So you're borrowing for the fraction. So you want to go immediately to the left. In this case, now we got 11 inches. So we're going to borrow from inches. If you have inches and you need to borrow for the fraction, borrow from the inches first. So we got 11 inches, but we need 1.
10.
So that becomes 10 inches, and we just borrowed an inch, which transfers over how? 4/4. Don't forget, anytime you're borrowing for the fraction, it represents whatever the denominator is over itself. Again, that was 3/16. We would have borrowed 16/16. Why? Because 4 over 4 equals 1. 16 over 16 equals 1. That's our inch, no matter which way you cut it. All right, so now we can subtract. 4 minus 3, 1. Denominator
4.
stays the same. Can we reduce 1/4 of an inch?
No.
Nope. That's as far as we can go. We got 10 inches up top. Do we need anything on the bottom?
No.
No. If you don't owe anybody anything, don't give anybody anything. Snoop Dogg it. Drop it like it's hot. Now let's go to our feet. We got a mixed number here. 10 1/4 inches. Now we have our feet column. 15 feet minus 12 feet leaves you with 3 feet. Foot mark and 10 1/4 inches. That is your final answer. Number 6. We got 28 feet 11/32 of an inch up top. There's no whole inches. And on the bottom, we just got 7 inches. We have no feet, no fraction. So, starting from right to left, do we need anything on the bottom?
No.
No, we do not. Because you don't owe anybody anything. Anytime it's on the top, you drop it like it's hot. So we got our 11/32 of an inch. Always ask, can you reduce it? Can you? No, you cannot. So we got 11/32 in that fraction column. Let's move over to the inches. 7 inches on the bottom. What do we do? Tosh? Mike? We got 7 inches on the bottom. You owe me something. That means you have to go get it. Where you going to get it from?
28.
The feet. 28 becomes 27 feet. We borrowed a foot because we needed inches. How many inches did we just get? We just went and got 12 inches. Do we need to do anything with this 12? Do we need to borrow here?
No.
No, we do not. Don't want you to get confused. That's why I went back to double check. Now we can subtract. 12 minus 7 is? 5. We have a mixed number of 5 11/32 of an inch. Again, this 5 is my whole number of inches and a fraction of an inch. But we still got feet in the foot column. 27 feet minus nothing is 27. So we got 27 feet and 5 11/32 of an inch. We can't do anything else with that. It's at its lowest terms, and that is your final answer. Number 7. We have 21 feet 5 9/16 inches. Fraction first, from right to left. What do we do?
Drop the 9/16.
Yep, snoop it. You don't owe anything. You have something on the top, nothing on the bottom. Drop it like it's hot. Can you reduce 9/16 of an inch? No, you cannot. Same thing. 5 inches minus no inches is? Drop it. Snoop it. We have a mixed number, 5 9/16 inches so far. 21 feet minus 11 inches. 21 feet minus 11 feet. You got 10 feet. And 5 and 9/16 inches. And that is our final answer for number 7. Hopefully everybody has caught on by now. For that one, we did not need to borrow. Let's look at number 8. I should have did something different with that. We have 10 feet, 7 3/4 inches minus 3 inches. All right, so fraction from right to left. Do we need something on the bottom? No, we do not. Anytime you got something on the top, nothing on the bottom, drop it, snoop it. 3/4 of an inch. Can that be reduced? No, it cannot. It's at its lowest terms. Inch column to the left. 7 minus 3.
4.
We got 4 3/4 inches. That's a mixed number, which consists of a whole number of inches and a fraction of an inch. We have our foot column. 10 feet minus nothing is 10 feet. Final answer, 10 feet and 4 3/4 of an inch. Hopefully everybody got this by now, because it's time to switch things up a little bit. All right, next 3 problems on the board. Number 9. Again, there's a little twist in this now, y'all. But you know what you need to know. So you'll catch on to this part pretty fast. So we got 13 feet. I got my column separated feet, inches, fraction. 13 feet, 1/8 inches minus 8 feet, 7 5/16 inches. So you'll notice that we don't have a common denominator, and we have 2 fractions we're dealing with. So just like in adding, we have to have a common denominator when we're subtracting. So, boss with the sauce, don't forget, is the largest denominator, because you don't want that denominator to be any smaller than that largest one. So what we're going to do is ask ourselves, can that smaller denominator, can 8 go into 16 evenly?
Yes.
And because it can, that means that 16 is my LCD. So 8 times what gives me 16?
2.
8 times 2. What about this? What are we doing for this numerator up top?
Times 2.
Whatever we do for the denominator, we do the same for the numerator. So 1 times 2 is?
2.
2. We got 2/16 so far. So what about that bottom fraction? We got 5/16 inches.
Times 1.
We multiply it by 1. You're letting me know that it doesn't change. And I like to show that so students can know why it doesn't change. It doesn't change because we're multiplying it by 1, because 1 times 16 gives me 16. Whatever we do to the bottom, to the denominator for that fraction, we do the same for the numerator. So now we can subtract. Got a common denominator. 2 minus 5 is?
3.
I'm sure I got quite a few of y'all on that. 2 minus 5 is not 3.
Nope.
It puts us in a negative. So that means you're in a negative in the fraction account, right? So you have to go borrow. We did this with the first problems in here. The difference is now you have a fraction. If we need to borrow for the fraction, where are we borrowing it from?
Inches.
The inches. But do we have inches?
Nope.
No. So that means we have to go get some. What do we get the inches from?
13 feet.
We get it from the foot bank. So I'm going to go to my feet. 13 feet becomes 12 feet. We just borrowed a foot. That foot transfers over to the inch column how?
12 inches.
12 inches. We need inches. So now what?
Borrow from the 12 inch.
We still need to borrow from the inches for our fraction, because we cannot take 5 from 2. All right, so now the 12 inches becomes 11 inches. So anytime we're borrowing for the fraction, just like in the beginning, y'all, don't get paranoid. Don't panic. Same thing. Anytime we're borrowing from the inches, that transfers over to the fraction column. How? As a fraction, right? When we're borrowing for the fraction, what did we just borrow in this case?
1 inch.
That 1 inch transfers how? Whatever the denominator is over itself. So what we're going to do here is the same thing we was doing. We just borrowed whatever the denominator is over itself. We just borrowed 16/16. The only difference now is we already had a fraction. We had 2/16. Don't forget, the numerator up top in this fraction has to be larger than the numerator on the bottom. So that's why we had to borrow. Yeah, honey. So now we take the... It's real cute. Come on, honey. Yeah. You got to go that way. No. Come on. All right. So we have 2/16 now plus 16/16. We just borrowed for the fraction, whatever the denominator is over itself. It was 16, so we borrowed 16/16. 16 plus 2 is 18. So we got 18/16. All right. Or, anytime you need to borrow for the fraction, we already have a fraction here, right? So just like before when we didn't have a fraction, you needed to know we were borrowing whatever the denominator was over itself, because in some cases, that has to be placed there, just like in the beginning. So when you're borrowing for the fraction and you already have a fraction there, if you just take 16, the denominator plus the numerator, 16 plus 2 is 18. Same thing. 16 plus 2 is 18, so we have 18/16 of an inch that way as well. We needed to borrow for the fraction. We had 2/16. Because we can't take 5 from 2, we still had to borrow from the inches. We got 12 inches from the feet. We borrowed a foot, 13 feet became 12 feet. That foot transferred over to the inch column because we needed inches, so we borrowed 12 inches. But because we can't take 5 from 2, we borrowed an inch from the 12 inches, made that 11 inches, and it's still, you're borrowing whatever the denominator is over itself. We had 16/16 because the denominator was 16. In this case now, because there's a fraction here, all we're doing is taking that 16/16 and adding it to 2/16. 2/16 plus 16/16 equal 18/16. Say that 4 times and I give you extra credit. So we got 18/16. So again, shortcut, if you have a fraction and you know you need to borrow for the denominator, for the fraction, you're borrowing from the denominator. All you're doing is taking the denominator, adding it to the numerator. It's the same thing all day long. All right? So we got 18/16 minus 5/16 gives you
13/16.
13/16. Always ask, can you reduce?
Nope.
No, you cannot. There's our fraction. 11 inches minus 7 inches is?
That's 8. That's 4. Yeah.
4. We have 4 and 13/16 inches. That's our mixed number. But we still have feet. 12 feet minus 8 feet is?
4.
4 feet and 4 and 13/16 inches. That's your final answer. Lots. All right, so if you didn't catch that in number 9, I deliberately set up a problem again like that for number 10. We have 9 feet, 1 and 1/32 of an inch, minus 8 and 3/8 of an inch. We got a mixed number we're subtracting from a number of feet in inches. So the first thing we need to do is have a common denominator. How do we find it?
32.
32. You don't want anything less than that. So you're going to ask yourself, can that smaller denominator go into the larger one evenly?
Yeah.
Yes, it can. How many times? 8 times?
8 times 32.
8 times what? Give me 32 though.
4.
What do I do for that numerator?
3 times 4.
3 times 4 is?
12.
We got 12/32 on the bottom. We have that fraction up top, 1/32. What do we do with it?
Times 1.
Let's show why let's show it. Times 1. 1/32 of an inch. All right, so we have a common denominator, so now all we do is subtract. 1 minus 12 is?
Can't do it.
Can't do it. Good catch. Pay attention to it, y'all. Sometimes even if you're saying it out, it will make no sense at all that you cannot take 12 from 1. You can, but it'll put you in a negative. So we need to borrow. Where are we going to borrow from? from right to left. Fraction inches. Go immediately to the inch bank. If there's inches, guess what? Borrow from the inch bank. 1 inch, now we have no inches, right? So we just borrowed an inch. That inch transferred over as a fraction. Anytime you're borrowing for the fraction, you're borrowing whatever the denominator is over itself. 32 over 32. Or, again, because there's a fraction here, and you know you're borrowing for that numerator, all you do is take 32 plus 1, and we have 33. Now, we got 33 30-seconds. Alright? I'm showing you both ways. So now, we got 33 30-seconds minus 12 30-seconds. 33 minus 12 is? Denominator stays the same. Always ask, can you reduce? Can you reduce that? No. No. So that's our fraction. Let's move over to the inch bank. 1 over to the left. 0 minus 8 is?
Can't do it.
You owe me something. So you got to go get it. I want it.
Yeah.
It's my money and I want it now. So we got to borrow. Again, don't forget, if there's something on the bottom and nothing on the top, we have to borrow because we owe something. So where are we going to get this loan from?
At 9 feet.
That 9 feet becomes
8 feet.
8 feet. And we just borrowed 12 inches. Now we got 12 whole inches right here. All right? So 12 inches minus 8 inches.
4.
Mixed number. 4 and 21 30-seconds of an inch. But we have feet. 8 feet minus nothing is
Bring it down to 8.
8 feet. And 4 and 21 30-seconds of an inch. That is reduced to the lowest terms. That is your final answer. Hopefully everybody's catching on to this. Number 11. All right, we had 12 feet 7 and 3/16 of an inch minus 9 feet 2 and 5/8 inches. I just thought about something I got to remember to show y'all the next setup. All right, so, and actually I'm going to write it really quick because I don't want to forget. So your problems will be written across. You'll see the problems written out like that. Man, Miss Wesley, I'm not sure where the subtraction sign is. Pay attention to that unit of measure. We got 12 feet 7 and 3/16 of an inch. Right? I know this is a unit of measure. That means this is telling me that I'm subtracting 9 feet and 2 and 5/8 inches. You really, really have to pay attention to that. Yeah, pay attention to that, y'all. Pay attention to where the measurement starts and where the measurement ends. Because we're subtracting, students get confused on this because guess what? That hyphen that joins looks like a subtraction sign. So let's work this one out. First thing we need to do is what? Find a common denominator. When we're subtracting, we have to have a common denominator. The boss of the sauce is the 16. Denominator should not be less than 16. So we're going to ask ourselves, can the 8 go into 16 evenly? Yep. It can. 8 goes into 16 how many times? 2. Times 2. What are we doing with the 5? Whatever we do to the denominator, same to the numerator. 5 times 2 is 10. We have 3/16 up top. What are we doing with it? Times 1. Because the denominator doesn't change, the numerator doesn't change. And that's how we show it. You don't have to, but that's how I like to show it. So now we got 3/16 minus 10/16. 3 minus 10 is? Can't do it. So we have to do what?
Borrow from the 7 inch.
Borrow from the 7 inches. That 7 becomes,
6.
hopefully y'all thinking it's a saying this while y'all watching this. We got 6 inches. And we just borrowed for the fraction because we need to make sure that this numerator up top is large enough to be able to take 10 and 10 away from. So we just borrowed what? We borrowed an inch, but it transferred how?
Into fraction.
A fraction. How are we transferring that fraction?
16, 16.
Can you see if I right here?
Yeah.
So we got 16 sixteenths. Again, when you're borrowing for the fraction, that numerator has to be larger as whatever the denominator is over itself. 16 sixteenths. If this was 10 32, it would be 32 over 32. If it was 10 64, 64 64, so on and so forth. Again, because there's a fraction here, we can take this denominator, add it to the numerator. 16 plus 3 is? 19. Same thing, 19 sixteenths. Alright, so now we have a fraction. 19 sixteenths minus 10 sixteenths is? 19 minus 10?
I mean, it's 9.
Denominator stays the same. Can we reduce that?
No.
No. 6 minus 2 inch column?
2 minus 2, 4.
6, yep, 4. So there's a mixed number. 4 and 9 sixteenths inches. Not feet. 4 and 9 sixteenths inches. A mixed number consists of a whole number and a fraction. So feet. Do we have any feet left? 12 minus 9 is? 3. So we have 3 feet and 4 9 sixteenths inches, and that is our final answer. Hopefully everybody's catching on. Good job for those that got it, and for those that don't, keep pushing. Next 3 problems. If you feel you're a pro at this now, pause it before you proceed. So number 12, we have 42 feet 9 3/4 inches minus 27 feet 10 3/16 inches. When we're subtracting, before we subtract, we have to have a common denominator. How are we going to find it?
16.
That 16 is the boss. We don't want that denominator to be any less than 16. We're going to ask ourselves, can the smaller denominator 4 go into 16 evenly? It can, so that means the 16 is my LCD. 4 times what gave me 16?
4.
What are we doing for that 3?
Same thing.
Same thing. Whatever we do to the denominator,
2.
same for the numerator. What about the bottom? We have 3/16 inches.
Times 16 times 1.
Yep, it stays the same.
3.
All right. So now we can subtract. 12 minus 3 is 9. Denominator stays the same. Always ask, can you? Can you reduce? No. All right. From right to left. Inches. 9 minus 10 is?
Can't do it.
We cannot subtract 10 from 9. So what do we do?
Borrow from 42 feet.
42 feet. Becomes
41.
41 feet. And we just borrow
12 inches.
12 inches. We just borrowed 12 inches. So, we take this 12 inches, we add it to the 9 inches that we already had. Because we need to make sure we have more than 10 inches, that's why we're borrowing from the feet in the first place. So we're going to take the 12 plus 9. 12 plus 9 is?
21.
21. So now we have 21 inches. 21 minus 10 is? 11 inches. And 41 minus 27 is? Hmm?
14. Yeah. Wow.
It's all good. So now we have 14 feet, 11 and 9/16 inches is a final answer. Again, first time y'all seeing this. We did not need to borrow for the fraction because we were able to subtract 3 from 12. But because we could not take 10 from 9, we had to borrow from the feet. 42 feet became 41 feet. We borrowed a foot which transferred over as 12 inches. We needed more inches to be able to take 10 inches from. So when we're borrowing from the inches, you add the inches to the inches that you already had. So 12 plus 9, that gave us 21 inches. Then we're able to subtract the 10 inches from it. All right? Let's look at number 13. Should have did more like that. Number 13, we got 17 feet, 3 inches, minus 11 feet, 2 and 3/32 of an inch. First thing we need to do is what? I need to do something.
Oh, you gotta,
I want to change this, and I'm changing this for a reason. Hopefully nobody jumped ahead. If so, they'll be like, how the heck did she get that answer? But I'm doing this for a reason. I want to switch this to, I don't know, let's just throw a 5 in there. There's a reason for that. All right, so first thing we need to do is what?
create a fraction.
We need a fraction. Why?
Because you can.
Because you owe me something, and I want it. So because anytime there's something on the bottom, it's as if your account is in a negative, you owe something, so you want to make sure you can cover that charge. You need a fraction there. So yes, where are we going to get that fraction from?
3 inches.
3 inches become?
2 inches.
2 inches. And we just borrowed an inch. That inch transferred over as a fraction how? 32 over 32. There's nothing to add it to. But we're going to pop that in. 32 over 32. Whatever the denominator is over itself. So now 32 minus 33 is?
32 minus 33.
I'm sorry. 32 minus 3 is?
29.
29.
Over 32.
And always ask yourself, can you?
No.
No, you cannot. So now, inch column from right to left. 2 minus 5 is?
Can't do it.
Can't do it. So we do what?
Well, from 17.
17 becomes?
16 feet.
16 feet. Don't forget to decrease these numbers when you're borrowing from them. 16 feet, we took a foot, transferred it over as what?
12 inches.
12 inches. So plus 12. We have to add it to the inches we already had. That's why I switched that 5. I wanted y'all to see that again. So 12 plus 2 is?
14.
Crap. Now we have 14 inches. Again, anytime you're borrowing for the inches, you're going to borrow from the feet. You're borrowing 12 inches. You add it to the inches you already have if you have inches. So now we have 14 inches minus 5 inches is? 9 inches. This is a mixed number, 9 and 29/32. A mixed number consists of a whole number of inches and a fraction. These are not feet. So now, do we have any inches left? 16 minus 11 is? 5 what?
Feet.
Feet and 9
29,
and 29/32 of an inch. And that's your final answer. Alright, so you notice now, for number 14, we have a mixed number minus a fraction. Now we're getting to the easy part. Easier. Everything that we've done, you've already been doing. You should know how to do everything else moving forward. No feet involved this time. So we got 8 3/8 inches minus 9/16 inches. First thing we need to do is have a common denominator, which is 16. 8 times 2 gave me 16. 3 times,
6
yep. We got 6/16 there, bottom.
times 1 times 1.
That carries over. So now, 16 minus 9 is? Can't do it. Same thing. We have to do what? Borrow from the
Inches.
only other place to borrow from. 8 inches become 7 inches. And we just borrowed what?
A fraction.
A fraction, which is
16.
16/16. So we're going to add 16/16. 6 plus 16 is?
32. Wait,
we just borrowed 16/16 again. When you're borrowing, it's all good. When you're borrowing for the fraction, you already have a fraction. All you gotta do is add the numerator to the denominator. It's the same thing. 16/16 plus 6/16 gives you 22/16. And again, 16 plus 6 is 22/16. So 22 minus 9 is 13. Denominator stays the same. Can we reduce that? No. Inches. Don't forget. Right to left, 7 inches. Snoop it. Mixed number, 7 and 13/16 inches. That's your final answer. Whew. Alright, so the final 3. Because I think by now everybody should have it. Because we work backwards, usually in a classroom, students would have been like, Miss Wesley, enough, we got it. Being the fact that I worked backwards, we did everything that you needed to know. Exclamation point. We did everything that you needed to know from the beginning. So now, you notice we're still not working with feet. We're dealing with mixed numbers and fractions of an inch. So this is pretty much at the beginning of the lesson, and that's why I worked it backwards. We know we have to have a common denominator. We have a mixed number, 11 1/4 minus 5/16 of an inch. So the 16, we don't want anything lower than that. So we're going to ask ourselves, can 4, right? That looked really bad, didn't it?
No.
You see it fine? Can 4 go into 16 evenly?
Yeah.
It can. So 4 times 4 gives me 16. Whatever I do to the denominator,
4.
do the same for the numerator. We got 4/16 up top. What about the bottom? Times 1. It stays the same, so we just transfer it over. 5/16. 4 minus 5 is? Can't do it. So we have to borrow from the 11. 11 becomes 10. And then we just borrow an inch for the fraction, which equals
16/16.
Yep, we borrowed a fraction. We borrowed 16/16, which actually equals 20/16. Again, because it's a fraction and we know we're borrowing for the fraction, when that fraction already stands there, take the denominator, add it to the numerator. Same thing. 20/16. So 20 minus 5 is?
15.
Denominator
16.
stays the same. Can we reduce that?
No.
No. Don't forget to reach. Right to left.
10.
Drop that 10 because we're not taking anything away from it. We have a final answer of a mixed number of 10 and 5/16 inches.
15. 16.
I'm sorry, 15/16 inches. I was looking up here. Number 6. Teen. Whew. I'm tripping. Number 16. We have 9 1/2 inches, a mixed number minus another mixed number, 5 and 11/32 of an inch. We have to have a common denominator, which is
32.
32. How do we find it?
You gotta say 2 divided by 16.
2 times 16 gave me 32.
And 1 times 16 is 16.
Correcto. So what about that bottom fraction?
Times 1.
Yep, just transfer it over. $16 minus 11? Dang, I'm tripping.
Nope. It's 11 minus
16 minus 11 is?
5.
Denominator
37.
stays the same. Always ask, can you reduce? Can you?
Nope.
Nope. So now, those whole inches, 9 minus 5 is? 4. Final answer is a mixed number, 4 and 5/32 inches. That is your final answer. And for number 17, the last one, if anybody stuck around with me, We got 15/16 inches minus 1/4 inches. This is how the lesson would have started off, pretty much. We have to have a LCD, yep, which is 16. 4 times.
4.
And what do we do for that numerator?
Same thing. 4.
Up top.
1.
It transfers over. You're telling me times 1. That means nothing changed. 15/16 minus 4/16 is?
11/16.
Always ask, can you reduce? Can you?
Nope.
Nope. That's your final answer. See y'all. No. Well, hopefully everybody's good on this lesson. I don't know about y'all, but that made me extremely tired. But if you have any questions, hit me up. So far, y'all seem like y'all pretty good, on top of your game. Everybody know what they're doing. But again, don't forget, do not wait the last minutes. It's three weeks before midterms. 3 weeks. Gotta say that like Total Recall, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or whatever you say his name. But that's it, y'all. Subtracting measurements. Don't forget, you have to have a common denominator, just as in adding and subtracting. What else? Anytime you're borrowing for the fraction,